But first, let's get into this week's headlines. Allbirds was a once beloved wool sneaker brand. It just sold its shoe business for $39 million and relaunched as an AI compute company, causing its stock to shoot up 880% in a single day. Meanwhile, Michael Burry, the big short investor, is going long on beaten down SaaS stalwarts like Adobe, Veeva, and Autodesk. The through line here, the market is simultaneously bidding up anything with AI in the name and punishing solid software businesses for being insufficiently futuristic. Michael, what do you think about these SaaS futures or the SaaS stocks that Burry is buying?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot because on social media, anytime AI is mentioned, you get sort of like this manic depressive dichotomy where one side is just all hype. SaaS is dead. And every company that does SaaS, us vibe coders are coming for you, right? So that's the one side. The other side, we talked about a little bit as well. They're more the doomers. But then there are people like Burry, right, who don't believe either side. And that's somebody probably looking at the priors, thinking about what's the probability that a successful business model over the long term will fail.
Yeah.
And they're gonna place their bet on ones that have shown resilience. And SaaS has shown some resilience, right? It's been punished by hype. And I think what people are struggling with is how to price it. And we talked a lot about vertical AI, and I did some research this week on it to think about how it and SaaS, on the one hand, they could be threatened, on the other hand, not. So the truth is always somewhere in between. So the ones that are threatened probably are like tooling, just thin wrappers, right? That AI could probably do. You could probably vibe code. But if it's mapping out a deep workflow, a vertical workflow, a SaaS that's covering that, like a Salesforce, or doing something that's institutional like PayPal with distribution system that's incredible, right? I mean, how many users do they have? It's integrated even into, banking apps, et cetera, sometimes, right? It depends on where you are in the world. But those are the fundamentals. That's what Warren Buffett used to always talk about.
Yeah.
And there's always the old school philosophy, buy low. If he's correct about the priors and these companies are more resilient, he's going to get rewarded.
Let me talk about the other side of the coin just real quick. Allbirds is renaming itself as New Bird AI, I think is what it's called. And it's going to be selling basically graphics card compute. It's just going to be renting compute is its business model now. And it's going to raise $50 million in order to do that. But now let's think about all these competing companies with a lot more money to spend. It's really hard to get these components right now because they're in such high demand. I don't know that anybody really thinks that Allbirds is actually going to get to the point where it sells compute. I think it's 100% just a play to get the stock to go up so that a few people who are in the know are going to make the money before, the bottom falls out of it, right? And the bottom falling out of it then flips to Michael Burry's position, where he's now betting on the stocks that are undervalued because of shit like this. I mean,
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot like flipping a home, but not actually doing anything with the foundation, just slapping some paint on it.
yeah, calling it
And
AI
they call
foundation.
that, yeah, they call that the next greater fool theory. So whenever a stock goes up like this, where there may not be any fundamentals at all,
Yeah,
all you need to do is find a next greater fool to sell it to.
that's right.
So that's often the bet. We're going to probably return to the next greater fool theory later with another topic, but I think it's a good example of an analogy with the dot-com bubble. The dot-com caused like a premium to go onto your stock, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with AI. Even if the company presumably had no capabilities before, we don't even know if they have the capabilities now. That's what you're saying. And really, is it just a thin wrapper around the word AI? We don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would bet against it.
Their stock has not come back down to where it was, but it has started to come back down just a little bit. It'll probably take some time, but it'll come back down. But it's just a pump and dump game these days. You see it everywhere. All right, let's move on to the next story. This one harkens back to 1983. War Games asked a simple question, and that's what happens when you take humans out of the loop in warfare? The answer, we got courtesy of Matthew Broderick and an AI named Joshua, was almost global thermonuclear war.
Yeah.
Now the U.S. Air Force has introduced something called War Matrix, which is a real operational AI wargaming system. They're explicitly designing it as human-machine teaming tool. So hopefully they learned a lesson from Hollywood and won't be repeating the same mistake.
Yeah, we talked about Claude Mythos last week, right? Where we're talking about this ability to point out zero-day errors. You wonder if that's related, right? Do you really want to trust AI in national security environments? But maybe AI is actually really good for this application because in the end, if you're using like LLMs or some kind of technology that's stochastic, meaning probabilistic, well, war games are probabilistic. The only question with that movie was in war games, Joshua was trained to never lose. The question is, how are you training it? Are you doing it safely? Is it clear that it's only scenarios? Are they realistic scenarios? And typically with AI, if the military is giving it better and better intelligence and data, those scenarios will get richer. And I like what the company said. Hey, we're trying to be transparent. We're just trying to point out the trade-offs that you have when you pursue any strategy. So that sounds like not a bad application of AI, provided that it's safe, provided that it's secure, since it's national security.
I would hope that it's not actually hooked up to like the launch codes and has the physical capability of doing that.
Yeah.
And this harkens back a little bit to our conversation with Anthropic and them declining the Department of War's terms, which those terms were specifically removal of man in the middle. So the Department of War was wanting them to agree to AI making the decision to kill and also pulling the trigger without alerting a human. And that's where Anthropic balked. So sounds like there is some of that consideration going on, you know, regardless of maybe what the government may have needed that one day that Sam Altman signed those contracts. But sounds like there is a little bit of that going on here. Maybe we have kind of realized that we need a human to review stuff.
Well, given the types of humans that go into politics and bureaucracies, they're sort of sociopathic, psychopathic nature. Yeah. I'm not sure the human is a safe option either.
That's a fair point. All right, let's move on to to the next one. A federal security fraud case just produced a ruling that should change how every person in this country thinks about AI. Bradley Hepner, the former chair of GWG Holdings, used Claude to draft legal strategy documents for his attorneys. Judge Jed Rakoff ordered them to turn them over. A federal judge just ruled they're closer to a postcard than private. So what do you think there? Do you think there's any overturning that in the future?
I don't know. That's an interesting ruling. I was just thinking about that case. Was it Korea, the gaming company? I think it's mentioned in the article where this guy, the CEO, had promised some massive reward, 150 million or something, to this new game if they met unrealistic targets. They apparently met the targets, and then him, being a very good CEO, started talking to ChatGPT, trying to get out of this promise.
Yeah.
Like a lot of CEOs, he probably did 50 different scenarios of why they're wrong, and then through some sort of doom loop, convinced himself that they're wrong. And that was one of the examples where that ChatGPT record got called. Yeah. I believe it was ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Right? So it got called into court, and it was used against him. Now that's interesting, right? You're not talking to an actual lawyer, so it's not privileged.
Yep.
If you handed it to your lawyer, there it gets maybe muddy. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that's an interesting aspect of this case.
Yeah, the muddy part that I read was if your attorney recommends you use it as a legal tool, then it could become under that umbrella of privilege. But just talking to an AI itself, AI can't be an attorney. So
I have a broader concern about privacy in general and I try to turn there's the mode where the user input is training data. Yeah. I turn those off. I don't know if everybody's doing that, but you probably should if you're getting any kind of advice in the direction of the Korean CEO. But I think this is one area where Europeans, because I lived there for about 7, 8, 9 years, where they're much more cognizant of privacy.
Yeah.
And probably you're going to see more regulations over there. I wonder how they would come down, because there's probably an expectation of privacy when you're using those that could be defined contractually. But a lot of times, if you have intent to commit a crime, that can be overruled, right? It can overrule the contract. I mean,
yeah, my takeaway from this is your history, even if you hit the delete button, is probably living on a cloud somewhere, and it's not private. So just when you're talking to your AI boyfriends and girlfriends, Just make sure it's, you know, not too personal, I guess. I don't know. That's weird. All right. Let's move on there to the Fortune report. Fortune came out with this report, and I think it's based on Anthropic numbers. But this is the amount of tasks that AI can perform right now today, right? So this I found, actually I saw this from a friend. A friend sent this to me, and people are kind of freaking out because this is the piece that's getting thrown around the internet. People are trading this around on Twitter, etc. And they're saying that computer programmers, their job, 75% of it almost can be done by AI as it sits today. Customer service
that's
70%.
That's a cruel irony, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
the
people who made it are the most vulnerable. Yeah.
Hey, in every job I've ever had, they always tell you, you know, it's this kind of folklore.
Yeah.
Do such a good job that your job becomes obsolete.
Well, it's like God, right? He made us in His image. So
yes.
But no. So the unfortunate part of this is that there's a second image in the same report that's showing the gap between where AI is now. If you look now, computer and math, AI is doing, you know, 35% of it today versus the theoretical 95%. So if this second image was shared as much as that first image, people would have a better understanding of
Context.
Yeah, a better
Priors.
context. Yeah. What it can do is hypothetical. It's not doing that today yet. And it's not good enough to do it without oversight. It's just not. Same thing with the military. We're just not there where it's able to do it on its own at this point in time.
Hey, in that way, it mirrors humans, right? If every business you've ever worked for, if you reached your full potential, right,
Yeah.
you could do a hell of a lot more. There could be peace on earth, Jason, as well. They all just got along.
There could be. All right. Let's move on here to Elon Musk. And I have good news for everyone. Elon has once again stated in a tweet that AI/robotics will produce our goods and services at a far faster rate than ever before. We can all retire and collect our universal income checks. But I think I have a different theory. If companies actually lay off employees at this high of a rate, will that not in turn affect consumption? Who is Apple, for instance, going to sell their latest iPhones to if nobody's employed? If nobody has a job, who's going to be able to buy these iPhones? Universal income isn't here yet, not today, but layoffs are. Let's talk about, are these companies maybe shooting themselves in the foot by riffing their own customers?
We're going to talk about Stalin and collectivism and socialism a little bit later. You'll see the connection there when we get to that point. But I think it's a good point. Actually, an economist brought this up earlier, that if you have massive AI layoffs, then that will undermine the companies that are actually laying them off.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of assumptions packed in there, that those workers don't get another job. That's number one. And if AI is so transformational as a technology, like other technologies, there was worker displacement at the beginning, but they got rerouted into other jobs. Now, not one-to-one. Some people suffer and they never get, you know, they don't get the next job. They don't retool, retrain. So there's an assumption there that if you get displaced, you'll never get another job because of AI. Now, I'm not a believer yet. I'm far away from that AI can do every job. It can't even do every job in corporate because half the work is politics.
Yep.
Half the work is managing people's personalities, people's psychologies. So it can't even do that, right? And then there's the gardener outside that people hire in the really nice neighborhoods. There are the power washers.
Yeah.
There are farming. You know, there's all this stuff that you wonder, okay, it's a little bit utopian right now. But the logic of what you mentioned, I think that's a legitimate point. But it assumes, though, that those workers won't find other things to do. My great hope is, if this were true, it's not about the UBI receiving some, you know, permanent government welfare or capitalist welfare, whatever you want to call it in this case. It's the idea that people like you and I who are creative, or my daughters who are creative, more on the artistic side, we're more on the music side, that we could spend more time on that stuff. That would be the great hope. And maybe you already see it in the creator economy. I don't think AI is going to displace that. Maybe it's even accentuated. Maybe more people go into making like Steinways, carving, you know, art. Maybe art blooms because of that. We just don't know. And I think that goes back to the Allbirds versus Burry. People are speculating in wild ass directions.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually read today that there was a new AI artist topping the Apple iTunes charts. I think they take them down as soon as they find out they're AI, because it's like bad publicity, but I can't remember the name of that one. It was Nora something, I think. But it was just so there was another AI artist making waves.
NoraJones.ai or
No.
MilliVanilli.ai.
It was something strange. But no, but so, that's still happening where these are fully AI artists. I think there's going to be something cool happen when actual artists are using AIs to maybe create new sounds that weren't there before.
Exactly.
Or maybe, using them to riff back and forth with lyrics and come up with cool lyrics. I don't know. There's a lot of applications for it to be used to enhance versus replace. And I think that's where our sweet spot's going to be. And I think that's where people are going to gravitate towards because they're going to know the mechanical versus not, at least for now. I don't know. Maybe in the future they won't.
Hey, one wish I would have because of learning piano.
Yeah.
I'm one of these people who, because I have this creative streak, I'm ADD. I'm all over the place. So I'll start like on a piano track and I'll get through like a few Bach songs. And ultimately I want to play like a Chopin song. Mm-hmm. But then I grab a blues book and I get distracted for a month. And then I get another song I heard on the radio. I download an app and do that. What my wish would be for a developer is I could just say to the AI, like a pedagogical AI, I want to learn this Chopin song. And you don't just learn it right off the bat, right? Give me the path. What are all the pieces that I need to learn and skills to be able to pull that off? That's where I think AI has some promise because doing that with books, one, it's expensive and it's just hard to follow and keep motivated, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a cool use for it. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that'd be really cool. I'm using it for my own learning purposes, basically, to help me learn faster and digest information quicker. Or if there's something that I don't fully understand, like, one of our topics tonight is on SPACs. There's a lot of terminology, financial terminology that I didn't know before a couple days ago. and I use AI to help me learn it. It's just, if there's a term you don't know, you can very quickly, and I think even as we move forward into like the Meta Ray-Bans and stuff like that, as that gets kind of upgraded and down the road a bit, I think we'll have even more instant access to, maybe my AI knows I don't know that word because it knows me really well. And it's going to feed me a definition of it when someone says it.
Yeah, it's enhance your thinking, not replace it. That's what you want to use it for. And same thing. I mean, there are always topics where humans, our brains are limited, our capacity, the knowledge is almost infinite these days. That's one of the good uses of it to help you learn things, but be careful when you're doing it. Just make sure you're questioning it. Make the AI search. I've talked about this many times. Whenever it's giving you information, double check, search. So many times Claude, because Claude is my favorite, I admit that. It'll tell me something confidently. We spend like 30 minutes developing the idea, and then I say, go search. And Claude's like, oh, I got to be honest with you. I was only using my training data, and there's actually a company that does the very idea you're looking at. Well, damn. So that was my fault because I should have known better. But I think this is like a public service message that we should always accentuate on this show is just people be careful when you're using these things.
Yeah, it is not 100% foolproof, and I think it's going to be a long time before it is.
Hey, you've just watched a clip from Show Your Priors podcast. We hope you liked it. Check out our main channel for full episodes. We're also anywhere podcasts are found. Give us a like, subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, but helps us out a ton. We'll see you back next week.